going to need you to stop playing with my lighting. Please. Stop playing with my lighting. Now, go over there and play with something. Life with cats is hard, especially when you have to read a book and they like to bite pages. Today I'm going to be continuing with the Trollhunters comic books, but this time I'll be discussing The Feld. The Feld is basically a collection of stories that Blinky tells Jim to help cheer him up and try to make him get through his whole I don't know who I am crisis. This comic book takes place right after episode 207, which is Hero with 1,000 Faces. The comic book starts off with Jim complaining that the gemstones were supposed to help his life and not make 1,000 problems. And Jim seemed kinda mad, kinda pissed off, kinda annoyed, even though at the end of that episode, Jim got kissed by Claire, and Claire called him her boyfriend, and he seemed completely happy. So his mood seemed kinda off and out of character.
But Super Reels, you should go.
They want to kill me, don't they?
Don't worry. I never expected them to like my boyfriend.
Boyfriend?
Claire?
Go!
Boyfriend?
Hello! I really doubt the writer actually watched the episode. So, hey, that's why he got it wrong. So Vendel tells Jim of one of his past Trollhunters and her triumphs. Madrix the Mini. So for the series, she was a he. So they wanted to tell a story of a female Trollhunter. They could have just made up a new one instead of taking one and gender swapping it. I don't really have a problem with that, but like still, it wasn't really that hard to just create a new Trollhunter. Would that have really been so hard? Honestly. So Madrix goes on to fight Noir, and she's all humbled but confident about it. And this is basically all fight scenes. The art is pretty good. I like it. It's not an ugly style, so I could tolerate it. The next Trollhunter Vendel tells Jim about is Spar the Spiteful. This is one of two parts in this book that did not bore me. Mainly because this is the first reference of Three Below and the Arcadians. This comic book did come out before Three Below did, for the first trailer, so this is the first time we ever seen an Arcadian, which is a nice Easter egg for Three Below. Except that no one bought this comic book, so no one really knew about it. So Spar the Spiteful helps this Arcadian alien get back to her home. Along the way, they went into some cavemen. Yeah, cavemen. So apparently the amulet existed way back then, even though it's proof that it didn't. I have a whole issue of the Trollhunters timeline. My last video on the secret history of Trollkind explains that, so you can go watch that video if you want more intel on why I hate the timeline. After the story, Jim is all interested on this visitor from another world. Of course, by episode 207, they didn't know about the alien. The next story was on one of Blinky's villains. Please stop interrupting me with your pouting dog. Please. I want to let him in, but he's just going to ruin everything. So Blinky is relative. He's being all thoughtful and kind while he's battling some Gruesomes. Apparently, Salt can also defeat Gruesomes, even though in the series it was Flower. So is it Salt or Flower? Or is it both? The book never explains this. So by the end of the story, Blinky, Arg, and Wiki come back drunk because they went to the troll pub because it was last call. And I found that hilarious. But it won't make up for this awful book. Okay. Now this next story is the other interesting part of this book. The only really interesting part of this book. That actually makes somewhat sense, but not really. Because again, with the timeline. And this one takes place in the 13th century, I believe. Back when Deya was having some problems of her own. She was questioning her own existence. What was her point? And Kitty, get off my camera, please. So of course, she goes to see the person who gave her the amulet. Merlin. And that's the problem because this takes place a century after the Battle of Gilead. From what we know, Merlin went to sleep after the Battle of Gilead. Because he battled Morgana and he lost his magic, so he had to hibernate. And he was placed in a tomb by his apprentice, Hizadux. So Deya should have seen Duxie, not Merlin. Yet another inaccuracy with the timeline. I am not surprised. Or shocked. So when she does meet Merlin, he's being all Merlin and being kind of Merlin. I don't know any way to describe him other than making his name into a noun. So he's being all Merlin about it. And she punches him in the face. Which is probably well deserved. because of Merlin. And she takes the Almacesson stone from Merlin and tries to get a peek into the future. And Merlin warns her that she might lose her mind, but Deya being Deya, she defies him because she has a problem with authority. Actually pretty accurate to the Callista from Wizards. So she was kind of like that. Hi, kitty. What are you doing? You gonna bug me again? And this is the only interesting scene of this whole book. Let me explain why. So basically she sees versions of the future. So this proves how malleable the timeline is. So basically we have Jim fighting during the eternal night as a human. And as we see by the last picture, that does not work. We see his eclipse armor and a human skull. So he wasn't transformed into a troll. And if he had not made that decision, Gunmar and the Gum Gums would have won, along with Morgana. We also see a draw as the Trollhunter, which did actually come true, but that's an illusion created by Merlin to teach Jim a lesson about he is the chosen one, which is butchered by the Rising Titans, because apparently it doesn't matter. We also see another one of Blinky dying. Back before Rising Titans came out, there was a theory going around that Blinky was going to die in the movie. And I kept laughing at those people because there were several rules to storytelling. One is that you don't kill off the narrator. You can kill off the narrator if the narrator is also the protagonist. And since Blinky was the narrator all throughout Trollhunters, and he was even the narrator for Rising Titans, that means he would not have died. So I was laughing at those people who thought he would. The next Trollhunter we learn about is Ankar the Unfortunate. Of course, he was the Trollhunter that was killed on his very first night. You get to see that, and there's already something wrong. He tripped himself into a field of spikes. Basically, in the art, the trolls have blood. Trolls do not have blood, because when they die, they turn to stone. They don't bleed like humans. Wait, I don't know if that was the writer's fault or the illustrator's fault. I'm blaming the illustrator because maybe they didn't know. And then it was torn limb from limb after he was retrieved from the spikes. Ankar being chosen does prove that Amulet does make mistakes. So that means Toby being chosen as the next Trollhunter could have been a mistake. And I believe it was. The next Trollhunter Jim learns about is of Kanjigar. And this one has a sort of a theme to it. It kind of mimics those kind of black and white, black noir movies of the detective and basically a girl who loses something or loses someone close to her or someone dear to her has gone missing, and it's all black and white, and they recruit the detective to find out what. So basically it mimics that, and I find that so very boring because there's like a million of those movies, and a lot of TV shows have made a black film noir, that was it. A film noir episode in this series. So boring. I don't know why they do that. Ugh. Basically, I'm going to summarize this. Kanjigar walks into a trap because the lady who hired him to find her twin sister was actually working for the bad guys. The bad guys being the changelings. So Strickler and Noir were both there. We also got to see Draw's relationship with Noir. Because in Trollhunters, it seemed like their relationship was maybe somewhat of a romantic one that didn't really pan out, and we got to see why it didn't work out. Because she used him to get to his father, bad changeling. And then Jim and Toby both comment that the ending was kind of grim, which it was, and how none of these stories ever are happy. So basically, Blinky or Vendel, all of them explain to Jim how his flaws is why the amulet was drawn to him. And Jim will have to basically embrace his flaws. So then he can find out who he is and what his purpose is. And basically the whole personal crisis, who am I trope. And I found that so very boring. The whole coming of age thing, yeah, that's not the genre I like, so this book is very boring. And then Toby and Jim run into some goblins on their way to help. And then Jim goes to recruit Claire to help. And they have a sweet moment at the end scene. The comic book has just proved one thing. They're so badly written that it has destroyed my sanity. And I have to move on from reviewing Trollhunters books. I know there's 5-6 other Trollhunters books that I want to read and review. But I can't because this book, along with 2 others, has destroyed my sanity. Now I can't. So I have to put Trollhunters, the whole fantasy genre away and just focus on sci-fi. I have a couple on my shelf that I can do. So, but if there was any other books that you want me to read and basically destroy the story of, please leave that in the comments.